Okay, welcome to Senate Institutions. Today is Tuesday, May 13th, and today we are going to be hearing and talking about the Capitol Complex, one of my favorite topics. So it's the first day of our week, so we introduce ourselves. So I'm Wendy Harrison. I represent the Windham District.
Sam Rhodes, representing the Orleans County District.
Joe Major, representing Windsor.
So Rob.
And Rob Plunkett, representing the Bennington District.
Great, thank you. And Senator Ingalls is not able to be with us today, but he can watch us on tape and we'll make sure there's a test. So what we are here to discuss today is the Capitol Complex, what it is, what its purposes are, and we're going to hear from historic folks. David, I'm putting you in the historic category. Hope you don't mind that. And Laura Trishman's here.
I straddle lots of things.
And then we're not making any. This is not a decision-making meeting. We're learning. And then I wanted to get some testimony about just ways that we can think about reuse of buildings, different ways than just straight selling the building. And so, Ellen, are you?
Oh, I was listed last, but I.
No, you're not. I just want to make sure you were Ellen, because we haven't met or talked in person in a while. So I want to make sure you.
I'm Ellen Riley. I'm from Moortown, and I am a member of the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative. And I also am the parent representative for the Act 186 grant that Washington County Upper Valley Services and Downstream was awarded.
Yeah.
In 2023.
Wonderful. And we'll have you speak at the end. So, Commissioner, you're not on the schedule specifically, but if
I didn't
you
know.
want to,
I didn't know.
okay, why don't we start with that? Because you look like you're ready to go.
I am, and I thought well, my team told me I was.
That's okay.
So
Thank you.
thank you.
And thank you for your flexibility.
So I almost said good morning, good afternoon, members of the committee. So we were here to discuss the Capitol Complex Commission, and I thought it'd be really good, even though you may have read the statute and you might have reviewed the guidelines, to give you a general overview so you have a holistic vision. So first of all, the mission of the Capitol Complex Commission and the Department of Buildings and General Services is to provide guidance and support on matters concerning the exterior alterations to structures and land within the Capitol Complex District. And that's to maintain the historic and the aesthetic integrity of those resources. David Sheets will correct me, but I'm pretty confident that I think it was in the late 70s that the complex was established, maybe the 80s.
Early 70s.
Early 70s.
1973.
Yes.
I got a whole team with me. And I will tell you that there were some, what I understand on the history of this is there were some historic properties that the integrity and the value of those buildings was not maintained. And so we created this plan. It's our planning commission. I think just locally, if you think of, this is how the committee, and you will hear from them, serve. We also have very detailed guidelines that are just referenced, and it is available online. The next is just this is the commission. These are the boundaries of the commission. And I think sometimes people, the one property, even for me, is the Baldwin Streets, or the Baldwin Street is incorporated into that. And I think that's very important because a part of the commission also focuses on viewshed. And I think that was the other thing, David, I'm looking at you. And the view shed, there was this beautiful view shed of the State House when you got off the interstate before you approached the Memorial Bridge. And the credit union is not in the Capitol Complex. And they built the new, what was known as the Vermont State Employees Credit Union. Now it's something else. And there was this huge block of one of probably the most prominent views of the State House. So elements were added, David, I'm really going through history in the early 2000s on view sheds, and we did a very significant study just around Montpelier. And that's really important, to maintain.
And
So,
so,
go
are
ahead.
you okay with questions? So
Of course.
that, so it obscured the view, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so.
They're not
What some
in-
places have done is, in a situation like that. As opposed to like a taking or something, you just have a regulation that says if for some reason that building is demolished, that it can't go higher. So that might be something to be talking about.
Yeah, and so the commission in the review will apply if there was a proposal on maybe some of the private property that is within the complex. It's not just state-owned property, there is private property. That's one of the elements that they look at, just to ensure, which wasn't recognized in the beginning.
And just to be clear, are the state properties the ones that have color and the gray ones are private?
No, this map was done for something else and Cole just grabbed it from our file.
Okay.
So
So
color,
ignore the colors?
ignore the
Okay,
color.
got it. Thank you.
So if we will continue, so statutory references, Title 29, Chapter 6, 181 through 185 outline the complex. I think it's really important, as you can see here, that the statement of the purpose is the General Assembly of the state finds and determines, declares the Capitol Complex is an important and unique historic district, and that the maintenance of the architectural and aesthetic integrity of the district is the utmost importance. And I point this one out because that's really the goal. It's, and the chair and the members of the commission, can talk about that with you. This is the next slide. This just highlights, the sections. They're much larger than this. You're going to want to, review, but 182 defines the boundaries of Capitol Complex and statute. It defines the makeup of the commission, and it defines developer, which is really a critical definition, is any person undertaking construction within the complex. 183 does an overview, and it's much more, again, detailed, but I just pulled out these highlights that no person shall commence construction on any structure without approval from the complex. So my office, we manage the process, we set up the meetings. I'm not a voting member, but I do attend those, and we ensure that presentations are online so we can get information to the commission so they can operate and be functional. They're required to make a decision within 60 days. If there's any delays, the statute talks about that. 184 and 185 is penalties and enforcement. And we lay out that if you don't comply, you can be fined up in this statute. Now, you did $500 for each day in violation. To my experience, and yeah, I don't have as many years as David Sheets. I do not believe that this ever has occurred. It has always been, I think, a really welcoming and open process, working with the individuals and in partnership with SHPO. Are you aware of any penalties, David?
No.
Right. And then enforcement, but it isn't statute. I mean, you clearly, modeled other policies around this. Do you have any questions
Well,
on the statute?
So it's similar to a historic district on its own, to other historic districts within the state.
And it's part of the Montpelier National Register District.
But just it has all the authorities that historic districts in the state can have, correct? Or maybe that's not a fair question, but I mean, there are other historic districts in the
Yes,
state.
so they, in the state.
In the state of Vermont, there are
certainly.
other historic districts.
Are you
So,
referring to design review?
yes,
But that would be at the local level. This is specific to the complex and our own guidelines.
right. No, I understand this
But
is a
this is
central one.
essentially a design review. That's correct.
Okay, and is there an appeal process?
I think, you know, I want to say yes, and I want to say, because I'm quickly doing the whole statute going, I don't know if it references appeal, but again, our experience, it's been more of a collaboration and working with the desirable approach. BGS is their number one customer for the most part. We have the insurance company, we have a new business that's opening up right next to the bridge that's actually coming to us next week. And then the properties on Baldwin Street, there was the exterior, I think about the I call it the Gibson House. They did plantings and they did some water retention, and that wasn't an issue. So BGS and state property is the largest customer, I guess.
Oh, yeah, it's just curious, because we talked about, you know, our situation.
So I guess would I want to appeal the commission?
No, I'm not suggesting that we do. It's just something that exists in other
Yeah.
processes.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to-
Yeah. So I thought it was, so that's just a really high level summary of the statute around the Capital Complex Commission. And I know, so the next thing I just want to, share with the committee, because I think this is important as you're processing some other ideas. If we could go to the next section, which is 166, selling or renting of state property. And so currently in statute, the General Assembly, through consent of the governor or through the Capitol bill, the commissioner may sell real estate owned by the state. The property in statute today says has to be at the highest bidder or public auction, but we typically we use brokers and we go out and we advertise. And then in no event shall the property be sold unless less than fair market value. And and we determine fair market value, again, through the broker. So there's a section in the Capitol bill called property transactions.
Right.
And my responsibility is I put a proposal together based on based on throughout the state, all property. If we have a proposal that we want to consider selling, and I bring that forth in the Capitol bill. And it will always pretty much follow form and function to the statute through process and meeting with legislators and testifying in the House and the Senate. Sometimes you modify that. And I think a really good example of that is the Waterbury property, Stanley Wasson, right? And the Williston property, the state police barracks. You told us to sell it at fair market value, but first option went to Waterbury because they had a vision for that site. The same in Williston, we had a year where the Williston had first option on that land. And then I think, just in the Capitol bill this year, what we call the cornfield in Waterbury. So you gave authority for that to be transferred and sold with some conditions that are around that. So that process comes in after we typically present something, if there are other alternative uses that you may want to consider.
The timing. You come and say I want to sell something, and it seems like there's a lot of hurdles that you have to get through. Or am I on?
No, I don't feel as commissioner there are hurdles because we're constantly, I think this is some of the conversation we started having this year, our inventory and our square footage and what are we looking at? That's a part of my daily,
Okay.
that is part of the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services responsibility. So, I'm very aware of our inventory and what's going on and what is needed. So you can do it through resolution if you went back and read the statute, but we've utilized the Capitol bill in that property transaction section because it gives all of the members of the committees of my jurisdiction, which is institutions, opportunity to talk about what that property is. So I have not never in my experience felt that it was a hurdle. We may not agree totally on, because in my history, you may have charged a little bit less in some scenarios, you may have asked, but, so how we think where maybe the revenue should go or what we should do there might be differences, but generally supporting, there's reason. If I'm bringing a property forward for you to consider selling, there's been analysis behind that, and there's reason why we're recommending it. I think the next one, it's just, I just want to point this out, and I know the committee knows it, but I think it's important and it's been set up this way. Proceeds from the sale of real property after costs incurred with selling it, right? Paying for a realtor or whatever, are required to come to the capital bill for reallocation. I can't take the sale of that and align it to my operating budget. It has to come back, and that will be your property transactions in the capital bill. And that is my really quick overview. And we we put this together for you.
Thank you. And you teed it up well.
Any questions?
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have David Schultz. Thank you for being here.
Yes. David Sheets.
I'm sorry,
No,
I know that. I
that's
just
all right.
was reading,
Hey.
okay.
You have a name like that, you have to live with it. And the mispronunciation. So I don't have a presentation.
Okay.
I am here as a resource in this discussion. So I didn't come prepared to
Well,
say much.
okay,
But if you prompt me,
well,
I'll give you a
The-
presentation.
okay, or we might want to go into a different order. So the purpose of this meeting, we have 3 new members of the
Yes.
committee.
Yeah.
Fortunately, all of them are here. And I was struck last session when I was here by the care given to just creating the Capitol complex. I very much appreciate it. I care about historic preservation. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I so value Vermont for establishing that. So that's why I have questions about the process too. So that extra layer, I think it's terrific. It's also a place of business, right? So the business
Yeah.
needs to be done well. We talk about parking a lot. We talk about, now we're talking about storms and stormwater and floods, because we have to, and the buildings have, it's crazy what's happening. But I just want to have a conversation that grounds the committee first and what is the Capitol complex. So perhaps the Capitol
Yeah.
complex members should
I
go next.
I-
And then just the importance
Sure.
of historic preservation.
Sure. Let me follow up a little bit with what Wanda said. When this was established in 1973, the state had demolished quite a few houses in the immediate vicinity of the State House to create parking lots. So it was the classic period of time when, and I'm looking at Laura, the preservation movement had essentially started in the 1960s, but like so many things in Vermont, it came late to this place. And the demolition of the post office down the street where the federal building now stands, coupled with the demolition of the Pavilion Hotel, which came upon a unique solution to the historic preservation struggle that was waged in this very building as to what to do with the pavilion. Ultimately, it was rebuilt, and now It's an historic building itself because it's over the 50-year threshold. All of these things raised consciousness about Montpelier losing its historic character. And with the widespread demolition of buildings around the State House, they made sure that it would not continue beyond what had already created parking lots, which we all have to acknowledge we needed parking lots. So I think since then, where are we today? It's a very different thing. And I've watched the 40 years that I've been around this place. First with the appreciation of the State House itself and its restoration, becoming a cornerstone for the tourism in this town. It is one of the top visited sites in Vermont, with over 150,000 visitors per year. We're right up there with Ben and Jerry's and the Shelter as the three top most visited sites. And that seems to be rebounding after the pandemic and the floods decimated our tourist economy. And we're rebuilding with our partnerships all around the community, particularly Montpelier Alive, who want to work very closely with us once again to connect the State House to what's going on downtown. So that's all critical. And I do think that in the wake of those two catastrophes, the pandemic and the flooding, we're all more keenly aware that the way state employees work and the way the state will continue to serve, the State House will continue to serve as the principal visitor site. We have rebranded the Capitol complex in recent years as the Capitol District and have made it known that we have an art gallery in the Supreme Court. We have a gallery once where the Arts Council was at 136 State Street. Adjacent to that is a sculpture garden that we routinely changed out the art, and the Welcome Center. And I think that those two parts of the complex, I'm hoping, will rebound at some point, but there's a lot of work to be done. And the work of recovering from the flooding in particular is what I think we're waiting to go through. My hope would be that the Capitol Complex Commission, as it has done in the past when Wanda and I worked with the group to create guidelines that continue to guide the decision-making that they do, is to look holistically at this place and its context, the city of Montpelier itself, and come and help us plan to rebound from these catastrophes. I think it's not easy, and the more we have everyone concentrating on that, the better.
Wonderful.
And
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just would like to add to David's comment. I think, it's important, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. But what he's referencing is that, myself and the administration, we are working very much on all of our submissions to FEMA, which is unbelievable. And really what David has talked to me, at some point in time, depending on which way the administration decides to go with its final application, there's a really critical role for the SHPO. There's a really critical role for the Capitol complex, because revisioning I'll just use hazard mitigation as an example. We will have to do mitigation. what does that mean to this district? And that's where those conversations will start to come in. And David has pleaded with me, and of course, but having those conversations sooner than just looking at it at the final proposal. And that's what's really important. And also just to that reference, once we kick off, we will have a working group that will have representation from Montpelier. We'll have the SHPO on this working group with our architect as we define and refine. But that's a ways down the road. I think you've probably heard some of Doug Farnham's testimony, and we're looking at some point in June to, I think, solidify what our applications will look like. And then that's really, once we get approval and we start to get an idea of what they're going to support, and if they approve a 428 submission, we won't even get to that. That's when that real work starts to begin. But I think, to your point, David, there's value in that. And one other thing, David's talking with the commission, or we talk about the exterior. One of the things that's really important also from a historic preservation, for this committee to know, David Sheets is the state's curator. He works for BGS. This is his building. But David also works with historic preservation on the interior of any of our renovations and state-owned buildings. And that is a collaboration, and that is really important to our design process. So that isn't lost when we look at the commission and just looking at exterior.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we have the Capitol Complex?
Sure. I think most of you have had, sure.
That's very generous.
He's injured, so
Oh, no.
trying to be.
Well, thank you for coming.
Supportive.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for
That wasn't
inviting us.
too short notice.
That's not a problem. I'm Heather Schuldeis. I have been on the complex for 20 years. A lot of the things that I was going to reference have been said. And a lot of people get very confused with what our charge
I'm
is.
going to introduce myself.
Oh,
before you
sorry.
get too far. Because I don't know, I think maybe you agree when I got too far. So I'm
Yes.
John Holler.
Yes, nice to see
I
you.
spent the entirety of my career in this building, working as a lobbyist and also a lawyer outside the building, and retired for
Weren't you
2020.
mayor?
And I was mayor of Montpelier, so I've been a resident of Montpelier for 35 years. Happy to try to be part of this and care deeply about this town. You voiced those sentiments exactly as I would, about caring deeply about the preservation of this beautiful
Well, thank
space.
you both for your work so far, and you're not done, so yay. No, but I mean, just, there's more to come, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's always just the floods and everything that's happening.
Yeah, so the one thing I was gonna say is I get stopped all the time and somebody wants me to go talk to David about the chairs or the drapes or something. We are very much on the outside, so we do fences and we do lighting and we do even temporary structures during festivals, et cetera. For the most part, we've had a very good working relationship with the city of Montpelier. We kind of worked on that wholeheartedly probably 6 or 8 years ago. There was a private property up in the backside of the complex that got approval from Montpelier, but never came to the Capitol Complex for their review. And everything from view sheds to maintaining the historic integrity, all those are what we look at. And so we do think it's very important. And David has said it every time. It's like, we need to look like the state capitol. So we don't want to look like something modern 20 years from now. This is an historic building and it should remain. So we've looked at fences and gardens. We helped site the Michelle Obama vegetable garden. And that was obviously when President Obama was president. We rarely say no. I don't even know if we've ever said no to an applicant. The applicants come to us through BGS. BGS puts together an agenda. Since the pandemic, we've been meeting virtually unless we need to do a site visit. And we have, like Gyra Billings is down in the Woodstock area. So it kind of helps if we need an emergency meeting. We've always said that we meet quarterly, but we found that we really meet when we need to meet. Sometimes it's more than that. So what else was I gonna say? So I was gonna say, David and Wanda reference this. This is a document that we worked on. We probably had 20 some odd meetings. We took a whole year, all the way through the summer. Because when I was on the commission, and I think BGS was kind of hearing it, it seemed like without a document like this, we were being very subjective. And so whatever the members at the time thought, but the next commission could be totally different. And now we've set a precedent that we can't carry through. So we worked on this document and it addressed parking was one of my big things. Not that we needed more of it, but if we were going to do more of it, how are we going to do it? There's been a lot of studies on parking garages, et cetera. So I don't know what more you want to know.
But just a question, is the pit area within the complex?
It's not in the complex, the pit.
The pit over there?
Yeah,
The
no,
pit is not in the complex,
Adjacent
the
to it.
parking.
It's on the border,
It's
but
on
it's
the border.
outside bounds.
True.
because it's the road, right?
Right,
Yep.
Yeah.
the road is bound.
So y'all should keep a good eye on that, on those plans. I mean, maybe offer to be part of the process. And there's going to be discussion about
Mhm.
development. And I think there already has been.
John and I have witnessed as Montpelier residents, many studies and thoughts. And so,
Okay.
yeah, it is.
Worked on that when I was mayor. We had a plan
Yes, we did.
for that
I
development.
was there.
Anyway, yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, we've had a few plans.
Right.
I'm just saying, one of the thought, and this is really looking towards the future, that we have not had a lot of activity since I joined the commission maybe 2 years ago, and really done almost very little, so hasn't been much. Progress.
Well, just lighting. They've been doing other things, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot happening, but
Yeah.
not really that involve the commission. I really hope that changes because Montpelier is in trouble, I'll just say, because of a couple of things. One is the flood had a dramatic impact, that's obvious, an enormous impact. And the other has been the stay at work changes for state employees after COVID. And those two things have created an enormous impact on our downtown, negative impact. And a lot of businesses are really struggling. And I really worry about the future health of our downtown. And I think that a lot of that depends on what the future of Montpelier depends on what happens. I don't think the commissioner and I haven't had this conversation. I suspect that this is going to change, that employees are going to come back. We're going to have the level of employment downtown that supported the level of commerce that we've had, that we've built up. And so these businesses are trying to struggle with dramatically less foot traffic than they've had in the past. And so I think the future of our community really depends on what the state does with these buildings to bring them back to vibrancy. And so I'm hoping that as a commission, we'll see some consideration of use of those buildings that brings back more vitality to our community, because our merchants are really suffering.
Right. Have you thought about housing in any of those questions?
So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically an applicant goes to BGS then puts it on an agenda. We don't have priority planning meetings.
Mm-hmm.
We are more like an historic design review board. So I would say probably BGS and maybe you and other state members would be doing that kind of thing, but we are there just to look at the integrity, the aesthetics,
Right. No,
We
right,
don't
I
have
understand
we
your
wouldn't have the
role.
authority to
Right, no, I understand your,
change.
but just to your point, Mr. Heller, about getting more vibrancy. That's what some towns are doing and some cities are doing, is converting office space to residential, and there obviously is a lack of housing.
And I hope that would really be under the purview of BGS as to how they want to if and whether and how they want to dispose of those buildings, so what they would go towards. And then we would, as the commission, review any proposal that came from them.
Right.
Or a developer
Right.
that they should decide to sell.
Do you ever have like a charrette, like a planning? I mean, maybe you haven't in a while, but would the commission be interested in having a conversation about just the future in general and just with understanding that you'll, of course, keep and protect the requirements that you have now. But what would you like to see? I mean, and you can even do it in, not in specific terms, you don't have to say like housing, but more vibrancy, more kids, less something. Like the farmer's market is great, and that brings people here, and that's good for locals, I would think. And so to me, that's a terrific use. But would you be interested, and you don't have to answer this now, but maybe the next time you have a meeting, just think about what other aspects you'd be interested in exploring or opining on, even if it's not technically in your jurisdiction now. And if you want to not do anything that's not in your jurisdiction, I'm fine, that's fine too. I just want to start conversations and think about the future and what do we want the place to look like in another 50 years, because 50 years goes by.
Yeah, I would just say that after the flood, we have been very engaged with getting updates from BGS,
Mhm.
not knowing what the future use of these buildings are. And so I think we're due for an update and a roundtable discussion with them. And we have a capital complex commission this week on Thursday. So we will certainly have a conversation with them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, floodplain restoration is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's happening, the conversation is happening about I'm just pointing to the stuff on the other side of the road. Yeah, you can really do a lot of floodplain restoration because I suspect that a fair amount of that parking is not required anymore. And do that with the discussion about the pit too, so that it's
Replacement, yeah.
You may be aware,
yeah.
there's an organization with capital, the Resilience Recovery Commission in Montpelier, and they have a full-time staff person that has been working on that's redeveloping the pit and the parking lots, flood mitigation,
Great.
so all those issues are.
Yeah.
So maybe they're talking, or maybe at some point you would be,
We are talking, that my
Invited.
wife is on it.
Okay,
I'm on
okay.
another board that's funding them, so we're all.
perfect, all right,
It's a
all right.
small town.
yeah.
Madam Chair, I think, I'm in conversations with them too. It's important that opportunity can occur, but state government, the administration needs to complete everything in the deliverables with FEMA and to ensure that we are going to recover what we can in dollars to build out what the future is. So I'm very sensitive that I do not want to proceed with that until we complete the
Right.
necessary requirements that we need to. So starting like those discussions or reaching out, I mean, right now and I think for any of you that have been through a FEMA process, there are just elements that we don't have a choice but to respond, and we're doing our due diligence and meeting those deadlines, but that's really critical. But I want to also note that I've had meetings with the resiliency group, also the Waterbury Resiliency Group. This is an ongoing relationship that BGS has. And so some information just isn't ready. And I think and I understand that when we look down our street and we still see those buildings vacant, and we still see that property like just sitting there, and one has to wonder what's going on. Where we are is in this process of our application. And I also just, to John's point, Montpelier Alive is a very active group. The information center on State Street, we cannot use that building because of how it was destroyed in the flood. That's part of the overall planning. But I've been working really closely with Katie Trouts, and we just met last week. We're using the outside of the building to help bring traffic to the State House and to downtown. We can't go into the building, but we're working on using our kiosk and the outdoor billboards. And if you take a look, I've washed the building and I've painted it, and we've put the plantings back because I understand, BGS understands the importance of the gateway and coming into downtown Montpelier. And so, I just want to, while we're silent over here, I think it's really important to know the amount of work that is going on regarding that. And I think we've got to get through this process before we add more.
Sure,
And
I'm just starting a conversation, but, and Commissioner, if you want to come back to this committee and tell us more about that process, that would be fine too. Because I don't want to inhibit that process, because I've dealt with FEMA. It's.
Yeah. I trust you. I just want to remind the
Yeah.
committee of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would take a step further is we don't direct or state the use of the building. We look at the project overall and we look at the outside of the building, the functionality,
Mhm.
the ADA compliance, et cetera. So yes, I grew up in Montpelier, housing would be great. It's not under our purview. But when the project comes and we look at the facade and we look at the streetscape and we look at the view shed, that's where we come.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
So if you want to give us more authority, no, just kidding.
Well, that'll be another meeting. It's exploratory and just, I mean, we're so much in flux. This is an opportunity to start thinking about the future, obviously. And I know people have been doing that and will continue to do that, but now it's especially important. Yeah, and so let us know, because when you want to come back and talk to us too, and to the house as well.
Sure.
Were you gonna say something?
The only thing I was going to say is I think it's really important for, particularly as new members, understanding the process that everything goes through BGS. If you want an intent to change an intended use or project, it would go to BGS as our staff and secretary, and then it would come to us.
Yes, definitely. And we have that, but the packet that should be on our website.
Yeah, and
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. It's, you know,
So Laura, yeah, you're welcome to stay.
thank you.
we always support Laura.
And she supports you. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. My name's Laura Trishman. I'm a state historic preservation officer, and I love the fact that historic preservation is being used so much in here right now.
Yeah,
It's wonderful to hear. Sometimes people don't use the word, but they're doing it anyway, which I encourage. But you all are using it and correctly.
Supporters.
Yeah,
we're big supporters. You don't get it back.
right, exactly. And
Disney tries to make places like this, I'm serious, and you can't make places like this. They come about. We can just save them.
right.
And also not save them so that they look sterile and are sterile. You know, that's a balance, which you could
They
talk
need to
about.
convey their history. So
Right.
the people who were using them at a particular time need to be able to recognize why it's been kept. Although buildings do need to evolve for our current uses,
Right.
which is what we go through with the state house regularly. Montpelier has Vermont's largest National Register historic district. They also have design review laid over that at the local level. They are also a certified local government, which means any federal funding that is being used, they get to say so in it along with the State Historic Preservation Office. So we partner together. With the Capital Complex Commission, you then have another overlay of a design review. And we get invited as need be to their meetings. We've been involved with buildings that they were looking at that are undergoing federal rehabilitation tax credits, which are the most stringent of the Secretary of Interior standards. So we're always at the table to make sure that what the National Park Service is dictating, what the guidelines are dictating, isn't changed or compromised so that a project can move forward with the best of the rehabilitation tax credits. We're also very much involved with BGS. We meet monthly to talk about their projects. We have a memorandum of agreement where we're reviewing everything from changing doors to light fixtures to rebuilding the dome and putting additions and such. So we're very involved. We have a review form and we also have an exempt items list. So that there's certain things we don't need to be looking at. And then we factor in archaeology as well. I will say that we have a really good relationship with BGS, and with the Capital Complex Commission. When the state divests itself of a building that is considered historic, we have conversations whether an easement should be put on it. Redstone, for example, we have an interior and exterior easement that was put into the deed. There's a couple other buildings on.
What's Redstone?
Redstone.
I'm sorry, I know you all.
No, Redstone is on top of Terrace Street. It was once the state police. It was,
Yeah.
The owner of it was built by
John Burgos,
the attorney, the judge. Anyways.
no, he was the father of political science
Yes,
at
yes.
Columbia University.
Yes.
He
Yes.
founded political
And then the
science.
Secretary of State was housed there for many, many years before we moved them down to State Street. It's a beautiful,
Yeah,
Beautiful
is that the one
building.
at the end of Baldwin? Is it?
no, you go
No,
at the end of Baldwin,
Oh,
take
okay.
a right, then take a left and go up.
Okay, so it's not
Yeah.
connected, but it's
It's not
there's-
connected.
No,
Okay,
but, and if you, at the end of Baldwin, if you look straight ahead, you'll see a little arched
so,
gateway.
yes,
Yeah.
Pedestrian gateway that goes on to the grounds of Redstone.
okay, I
And
was wondering
up
what.
the hill to the mansion.
But he sold it, BGS sold it 10 years ago?
No, wasn't, no.
Maybe we got language, but you didn't have a buyer for quite a while, right? Yeah. Well,
Yeah, you had permission.
Yeah.
And also I would
Yeah.
add that when the state historic sites divest of a building, it also goes through the same process as our name through the Capitol bill.
Yeah.
And so you do it by easement, so but it's on the property, right? It's on the deed.
correct.
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
And that is really very important to maintaining that capital district that we were talking about. Yeah.
Right.
Right, so it's adding a layer of expertise and review and consultation, and we check our easements annually.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
I have to thank you. I had, the people from, Windsor coming at me with pitchforks
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and torches about the old Constitution. And so, finding out that we had funding and things of that nature and giving it, the detail on that. You saved me, from, a fate worse than death. So I have to thank you. And thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We have a lot of properties and we can't get to all of them, and Old Constitution House was affected by flooding.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for the flood managers to tell us if we have to elevate the building. Which will not be a good idea, but we have to do what we have to do to protect it, so.
Well, I think probably more than anything, what we have to do is be in constant communication
Mhm.
and those types of things, because it is important to that community. And we want to make sure that we give them the right information at the time. And so, but thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, things like that are reported to the whole state. So you'll get visitors. In year and a half.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it'll be open to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the Vermont Constitution.
Okay, so anything else you want us to know? Well, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, thank you.
And so I asked Ellen to be here because, and it's not really to talk about a specific proposal, but just a general concept, with housing in particular, and housing that wouldn't require, parking, because parking is an issue. So this is just theoretical. You know, there's no plan, but I just wanted to share it with the committee too, as an example of something that might make sense.
So bear with me because I don't have the background of all of you. I'm just a parent. So, and I've been testifying for 2 or 3 years now in various committees about what this could possibly be for you. So I'm used to writing these things. And I had provided a copy. So, Madam Chairman, thank you for inviting me and giving me a chance to speak to you this afternoon. My name is Ellen Riley. I'm from Moortown, 70 years old, and I have a 27-year-old son with Down syndrome. And like many parents, since the day he was born, my constant concern and worry has been who will care for him, keep him safe, make sure he has a permanent home and a full, active, meaningful life when I can no longer provide that. So I'm here today wearing 2 hats. I am, as I alluded to earlier, a member of the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative. Some of you may be aware of it. We've been here for 3 years constantly, but it's a grassroots parent-led initiative working to have the state create housing model options for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, IED. The initiative came about in 2001 after an op-ed was written in 7 days by Elizabeth Campbell that said, Vermont is a wonderful place to live unless you have a child with a disability. And she went on to describe the lack of housing in Vermont for IED population, especially those with high needs. The shared living model is what Vermont designed 30 plus years ago when Brandon Training School closed. And it's the only model that's been developed, although others were promised. So while this model works for some, it doesn't work for all, and it is not sustainable. Many parents, several of us in our 60s, 70s, and 80s who still had our young adult children living with us, identified with this article, banded together, and created this grassroots group. So my other hat is that I am the parent representative on the 2023 Act 186 grant, and thank you for those who were involved in passing that. That was awarded to Upper Valley Services Agency and Dasbury Housing and Community Development for the research and development of a housing model or models for individuals with IDD. 2 models have been developed because of that grant. So again, thank you. And then funding to build those models happened last year due to a bill that you all passed. Again, thank you. That changed the language that allowed Vermont Housing and Conservation Board to fund the grant proposals that this type of targeted building to happen. So Vermont is not meeting the requirement to provide housing options for individuals with IDD. In 2023, it was determined there were over 600 individuals with IDD in Vermont that were in immediate need of housing. So if housing isn't developed, this is our future, huge future homeless population for Vermont. The state are own properties that are not being utilized, that could be developed to provide permanent homes for my son and the sons and daughters, your individuals in Vermont. One housing model that is very popular with many parents is what we call the service-supported peer residence. And in that model, you have individual apartments so that individuals, efficiency apartments, can have their own home, so to speak. But there's a communal space with a kitchen, a dining room, a rec room where they can meet and socialize, a laundry room, and an office for the program director from the agency to manage these individuals. So in the Capitol complex, there is a property, actually 2 properties, that could be considered for this model. Parking would not be an issue because The individuals who live there don't drive. The only parking space that would be needed is for the program person who is there to monitor and manage the individuals. There is easy access to downtown where there are potential jobs. There are services and shopping. So having individuals with differences living in the state capitol complex is a wonderful opportunity for showing the contributions that individuals with differences can bring to a community. There are, as you were hearing today, there's many steps as the commission, as Wanda expressed, that have to happen before this. So I'm just here to say it can be a win-win for the state agencies that have to provide housing and services for our population in Vermont, and for the developers who are need to create building and provide homes for individuals with development and intellectual disabilities. They deserve a safe, permanent home with services provided for their agency. So I just ask you today to think outside of the box as you look at your state-owned properties, both at the complex and throughout the state, because you've got Bennington and Brattleboro and Dumfries, these rural areas that have individuals that need housing. And just think outside the box and keep us in mind, whether a developer would buy the property, rent the property. I mean, that's all out of my purview. I'm just here to say that we have this need. You have a resource. Let's come to the table and see if there's anything that can happen to fulfill a huge need in this state.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you. That was helpful.
Can't tell you much about how it happens.
No, it's just your concept is, I mean, and there are other possible ways that there's probably 20 different ways of providing housing. With this, and the state could get the same revenues that it's getting now. I just think it's important for us to think about being intentional as possible when we get rid of buildings, especially buildings in the Capitol complex. So,
Well, at least we don't know who they are.
don't give them money. All right, well, I have learned and I appreciate everybody's time. Are there any other questions? I do want to talk to the members about schedules. But we can do that after we adjourn. But thank you all very much. So we'll see.